Good afternoon. I think it's very hard coming after the previous session, equally iconic brand, Guinness. I have been 6 months on the job, so there's plenty to learn. I'm already here on stage. That's why Clare from VCCP is joining me, basically to tell the story of the power of one word that defines a brand, which is generosity, that has helped us in the past 7, 8 years to reconnect with consumers, reconnect ourselves with our category, and we grow the business that was declining 7, 8 years ago. And I would start with this image that might be a bit intriguing for you, and why this guy is sharing this sort of image of an ancient temple in Greece. This is a temple of Delphi that amongst all the temples in Greece was the one that they really had a very strong relationship with. And then people used to go there to consult the oracle, the gods, about their fate, their future, what they should do with their lives. But particularly in this temple, at the entrance, there was an inscription saying, "Gnos Selton," in Greek, which means know thyself, which is an idea that for me is very important for us to bear in mind as marketers and people working with brands and working in the business that we are in. Because very, very often, we are not asking that question. We are seduced by the gods, the gurus, the temples, and the tools, and the oracles that are presented to us, AI, and all of those things. And then we get in a journey of embracing those tools and imagining that they can sort out all the problems without asking that question. And as a result, as we are sort of hijacked by those tools and seduced by them, we forget about that in the end of the day, the whole business of marketing and branding is about creating relationships. But by falling on that trap, we become transactional instead of relational. We look at consumers as recipients of attention that we have to extract all the time, rather than connecting and earn our value with them. And then we see dollar signs above their heads, rather than actually trying to find ways in which we can create meaningful value in their lives. So the first thing we did, I didn't, it was my predecessor that was in the brand, a guy that is now in Australia, Ben Weeks. He went to the archives, basically to understand who we are as a brand, why we got lost. I won't tell the story once again. I think, Claire, you were on stage last year. There were many people telling the story before. So I won't repeat, but I will give you the short version for the ones that haven't heard that story before. So once upon a time, there was a guy called John Cadbury who sold chocolate. His 2 sons, Richard and George, took over the business. They were driven by the Quaker impulse of generosity. So they didn't just build a factory. They built a factory in a garden with schools, hospitals, and cricket pitches. And when it came to making chocolate, they didn't just put a glass of milk in their chocolate. They put a glass and a half, which is to say, there is a glass and a half in every one. So that's where Ben, my predecessor, came up with, in basically in summation of all the work he reviewed in the archives to understand the history of the brand and understand the archaeology of the brand. That boils down to this one word that drives everything we do, from communication to product to innovation, even our relationship inside the company, within the Cadbury global team, the local teams, and with our agency ecosystem. But today, we won't talk about how we came up with this, but how we are bringing that to life. And then we boil down that to 3 principles. Singularity, with the reference I made on the Temple of Delphi, knowing yourself. What do you stand for? Who are you? Where you come from? Know your origins. Second, the power of silence. I very often hear from musicians that there is no music without silence. There is no dialogue, actual conversation, without having a space in between, having no silence, having no ability to listen. So how we are applying that in the work we do in our executions. And finally, space. Creating, moving our ass out of the communication ecosystems we come up with and putting consumer at the center. Starting with singularity. So all the work that we did prior to generosity was not successful in our point of view, because we were following the codes, the symbols, and the pressures from the category. Cadbury is in a chocolate category that is all about being vibrant, being loud, being colorful, and giving people sugar rush. And then, because we were lost, we were basically replicating the category and not being who we are. It was from the moment that we have identified, our history and then came up with the principle of generosity that we managed to turn around the business. And it was very hard doing that because we had this. And as, years ago when I saw that execution, I was very, very proud of it. I was really envious of the guy who came up with that and the team that came up with that. Such an iconic work. That was right for that time. But it was wrong from a strategic perspective because the brand was never about joy. And from that moment onwards, it was very hard replicating that work. I don't know if you may have heard Mark Ritson saying, that the gorilla didn't have legs, and that was the problem. It was very hard to follow up that work. And we had to move on from that and reconnect to the roots of the brand. And I like this quote from Jeremy Bullmore. People build brands as birds build nests, from the scraps and straws they chance upon. The art of strategy is making sure that what people chance upon are the right kinds of straws. And we were basically building our nests on the wrong tree, on the tree of joy up there. This is just a methodology that Kantar uses for positioning brands. And by trying to follow the category and all the other competitors, we were trying to push the brand in that direction, building our nest there, whilst all the consumers were building the nest on this area of comfort and belonging. The second thing was, there were many frameworks sitting in the company, in the agencies, trying to define what the brand is. Brand temples, onions, pyramids, and all those frameworks. But I heard the other day that a philosopher saying that the map is not the territory. You cannot try to get the sense of what the territory is through the map. It's just a representation. And very often we get really seduced by those tools and try to define our brands through that. But we decided not to do that because that was creating more confusion than clarity inside the business and with our agency ecosystem. So we chose one word, generosity. And our job was to ensure that people really understood what that was. And defining what it is and what it isn't. The first sort of misunderstanding is, okay, generosity is about being nice and being kind to one another. And then we made it even sharper. It's not only about that. Actually, generosity is an act of sacrifice. It's putting the needs of others before your own. If there's no sacrifice involved, it's not generosity. Second, most brands try to put the spotlight on themselves and create also grand stories about generosity or kindness and everything. And then we decided, no, that's not who we are. Because I think the smaller the acts of generosity are, the more everyday they are, the more powerful they are to draw emotion. So we call it the small big. Telling stories about small moments, small everyday moments with a big emotional impact. And finally, instead of trying to dramatize those stories in a perfect, unrealistic, idealized way, we made it really real. Because the more real, the more you can relate to it. And that takes us to the second principle that Claire is going to share with us now.
So I'm using a handheld microphone, which apparently I've been told is very dangerous, so I will try not to come with any accidents. So silence. Silence, is kind of counterintuitive if you want to build a relationship. Surely you need to talk to someone to create a relationship. But for us, building a relationship from a brand perspective for Cadbury was never going to be about selling and shouting, but actually listening. And I think in any relationship you have, whether it be with your partner, with your kids, with a colleague at work, trying to create a relationship by talking at someone is never generally very successful. Listening is a really key component of building that relationship and creating the space for silence. Because silence, and this chart here is deliberately black, creates space. It creates space for people to come in, to think things, to feel things, to emote, and to connect with things. So silence was our friend from the very, very get-go. And I think this was, again, very challenging at the time, and we had to do a lot of work with the markets to persuade all of the markets, or with with Ben, your predecessor, as you said, that actually silence was a good idea and actually quiet was a good idea. Because at the time, the category was very, very loud. It was very bombastic. There was a lot of music, a lot of noise, a lot of jingles, but we deliberately wanted it to be silent. And we've only really recently realized why this is important and why this is powerful. So I've recently been doing quite a lot of work with guys from the movie industry, and how they talk about sound and how they use sound. And they were describing to me about the difference between diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound. And I think this has helped explain why silence has been so powerful for us with Cadbury. So I'm going to explain what it is and then do a little experiment with you, because it's the end of the day and you're all probably feeling a bit tired and want to go for a drink, so we'll try and keep it interesting. So diegetic sound is the sound, imagine you are in a film rather than watching a film. And imagine, for example, this is the sound that you hear. We're all doing a bit of that. So this is diegetic sound. Might take you back to a summer holiday, might take you back to the pool, maybe you did some laps this morning, but you feel like you're in the water, especially if you've got headphones in, which obviously we haven't got today. But then some non-diegetic sound comes along. Oh yeah, we know what film this is. And this is music or sound that isn't in the film. The characters in the film can't hear this sound, but as an audience you can, and it's creating that kind of amplification of intensity and fear. And of course that film was Jaws, but we didn't want that second kind of sound, which advertising uses a lot, and to a lot of very good impact and effect. We deliberately wanted sound that was quiet. So I'm just going to play, this was one of our most recent films. This is Speakerphone.
Right, man.
It's me.
Oh, hey, son. I thought it was your mum.
How was your first day?
Fine. Good.
Come on, Dad.
Everyone was just, I don't know, younger.
Yeah, but that means you've got experience in that.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I think you're real clever, you know? I wish I was like you. Anyway, I got you something in the glove box. Before you ask, did dinner have fruit or not?
There's a glass and a half in everyone.
So you deliberately don't see the other actor, who's a son, on the phone, and there's an ad that is essentially shot in a car with just the sounds of what's in the car and outside of the car. But it creates that sense of intimacy and makes you really, really feel it. And I think for us with generosity, creating emotional connection, getting people to feel it, tapping on all those straws that Guy was talking about, every single experience that we've ever had with Cadbury, throughout all of our lives was really, really fundamental. I won't play this. This was Garage. It's another good example, but we are running out of time, people, so I'm going to keep going. Space is the final thing that we wanted to talk about. Space, time, continuum, all of those things. But space, again, was really, really important for us with generosity in terms of connecting with people. And the reason for this is, it's very easy to say, we put the consumer at the center of everything we do, but do you really, and do we really? Because it's very, very easy to forget that and end up putting the brand at the center. But for us, this has been a fundamental thing that, if we really want to be generous, then we should focus our work on our consumer, not on us. So 200 years, again, you might say, celebrating your bicentenary is not a very generous act, and in fact, Mr. Ritson did say so. But our sense was that it was, because we've never felt that this brand belonged to Cadbury or to Mondelez. It belongs to the nation. And Yours for 200 Years was the platform that we built for the bicentenary. The first example of it was this, which was a press ad, has a bit of the Zeigarnik effect going on, if anyone who knows what that is, which is essentially, if you complete something for yourself, or if you see something in something, you connect with it much more emotionally and you're more likely to remember it. So to allow people to see the 200 for themselves was the first thing. The second thing is a piece of work that we did, which we're very, very proud of. And this wasn't a campaign shot by VCCP, the agency for Cadbury. It was a campaign that was shot by the nation over the last generation.
hands can swing. Though nothing will keep us together. We can meet them forever and ever. Or we can be heroes just for one day.
So we are a bit low on time, so I'll quickly go through some of the other things. I mean, throughout all of our work, this was Wordless Bar, you may be familiar with. It was a partnership with Age UK, which was all about donating words. And we took the words off our bar to encourage people to donate their words to elderly people living in loneliness and encouraging people to talk. So again, more acts that, again, try and trigger generosity in others by getting out of the way, creating space for consumers to come in and to be generous themselves. And finally, we just wanted to talk about generosity and creating space isn't just about creating space for consumers, it's also about creating space for each other in our relationship, not only working on the kind of work that we work on, but also in other markets. And there's a very short story related to South Africa where we went, I won't play the ad because we've kind of run out of time sadly, but we went there and we kind of tried to sell them a Christmas campaign, and we said, hey, Secret Santa would be great. We do it in the UK, we do it in other markets, you're gonna love it. Let's give chocolate to people secretly at Christmas. And they kind of said, well, you know, we do celebrate Christmas, but not in that way. And then a really lovely conversation ensued about what Christmas means in South Africa, you know, when we were in Johannesburg. And it's a very, very different story about people going home, taking the bus home from where they came. You know, they work all year in the city to earn money, and then they take that money back to their families and their relatives in their kind of hometowns and home villages. And that is what Christmas meant for them. So from that, we then built a lovely film. They built a lovely film called Going Home. I can't show it to you because we are at time. But it's a very beautiful case, I think, of sometimes it's really important to get out of the way, particularly when it comes to culture and generosity. So I'll have to click this through. There it is. So we'll just quickly wrap up. But it's really great. You should see it somehow.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I was talking to Claire about, okay, these are principles that really are guiding the way we do the work on Cadbury, from strategy to execution across all touch points, innovation. But then I also realized that those principles are guiding the way we work as well. I can show up as I am, as this Brazilian with this very weird accent. And
great glasses.
Yeah, thank you. Working with Claire, working with the different countries, and then we can show up as who we are to everything we do. Second, we are very comfortable with silence. Whenever there is ambiguity, there is lack of clarity, there is uncertainty, we don't try to fill that space by talking, by having a point of view, by sort of reproducing a preconceived idea, but being comfortable with silence. So there is a lot of silence on Cadbury meetings. Yeah. And finally, maybe we can talk about space.
We like to give each other a lot of space.
Yes.
I think space is important because, again, it's kind of the space to be creative, the space to kind of go away, think about things, and to trust each other, I think, is the fundamental thing in terms of our relationship. But I guess, you know, it would be lovely to thank you for giving us the space and for your silence today. And hopefully you've enjoyed this session. Thank you very much.